Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of AngularAir. I am your host, Justin Schwarzenberger, and today we are going to be talking and checking out virtual reality and WebGL. Should be pretty cool, as usual. Our panelists joining us today, we've got Alyssa with us. Alyssa, how's it going?
Hey guys, going good.
And we've got Austin with us. Austin, what's happening?
How's it going, guys? I kind of like wearing the panda hat like this. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I don't know. It's awesome. I love it. I love it. Keep doing it.
I love Webpack.
Yeah. And we got Mike with us. Mike, what's going on?
Not too much. Just happy to be here. Trying to get my audio set back up. I lost the audio on my headphones.
Oh, no. So you have 1 ear on and 1 ear off.
Yeah. Trying to get it figured out. I can't figure it out.
All right. Well, you got time. I think. And our guest today joining us is Ayşegül. Ayşegül, how's it going?
Hi everyone. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're glad that you could come and do the show. We're excited about it. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you got going on and stuff so they can get to know you?
Sure. My name is Ayşegül. I'm a Google developer expert for Angular team, and also I'm a happy Nerval at Nerval. If you don't know about it, Justin and we just start working together a week ago. Although we don't get to see each other as much. This is actually, I think this is going to be the most I've ever seen you in my life.
Like an hour straight.
Yes. And we do Angular consulting, as you might already know. And I'm from Turkey originally. I live in San Francisco. I do Angular and other stuff. Huge fan of visualization and D3 and WebGL. And that's me, I think.
Awesome. Now you've given a bunch of talks on this as well. And I think recently we're on Adventures in Angular. I think I heard, I don't know how long ago that was, but you were on there talking about it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I haven't given any AR talks yet, augmented reality. And I will later on today. But today I'm going to give you a demo of how to do augmented reality.
Sweet. So augmented reality with Angular, right?
Yes, of course.
Awesome. All right. Just checking. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get into it then? Why don't we first start talking about what are we talking about with augmented reality and stuff like that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the reason I want to talk to you about augmented reality is because, there's this concept of mixed reality. It's kind of confusing concepts. We were supposed to talk about the WebVR, which is a absolutely immersive artificial world that you go into, and AR is kind of like a mixture of two, mixture of real life, real world and virtual worlds. So we add some stuff, but it's using basically the same APIs with few additions to it, and the main concepts are the same. And since Austin gave a great talk about, WebVR on ngConf, I just wanted to go ahead and tell you a little bit more about how you can do augmented reality with all the things that, you already know from, creating 3D worlds or creating WebVR experiences. Any question on AR versus VR? Or?
Yeah, so what are some of like AR? Like the HoloLens, like people probably know what the HoloLens is.
Mm-hmm.
Or Google Glass. That's
like saying that right? I thought it was like hollow.
Whatever.
I just was curious.
And then VR is like the Oculus, right?
Yes.
So those are the two, like that's how I like compare the two together, because people are pretty familiar with both those.
Mm-hmm. Actually, you don't really need any device other than a mobile device. You don't need anything like a HoloLens, which is super expensive. You really don't. And Google Glass actually was a great platform for doing AR, because what you're doing is just extending your regular day, everyday reality, right? So you have your own environment and you're adding some 3D objects or information to it. So that's basically what AR is. So Google Glasses was great, but it's not being used that much and developed anymore, that much supported. But all you need to do is just like point your camera, any camera, while point your device to any kind of marker that you see. These are my markers that you're going to see today. And you add some 3D object to it or any information to it. So
like Pokemon Go.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's a great example that everyone knows. Although, interestingly, I haven't played it.
So what are some other potential compelling use cases for AR other than catching all the things?
I was actually thinking it's a great tool to do kind of like, what was the name of it? Guerrilla advertisement. So basically what you do is just put some, AR QR codes with some hero images so that you can detect, and everyone can go and just, point their phone at them and scan the QR code to go to your website, and your website will be able to show the AR content that's there, which is a really awesome thing to do. But there are, so many other uses. I've been thinking a lot. Education is one of them for sure. I believe Google I/O had one demo where they are doing it with Google Tango, which is another device, looks like a tablet. And they were doing a great demo where they work with a huge store like Home Depot, and where everything is. When you're looking for something, you don't have to ask. Even if you ask, I'm sure if you've been to Home Depot, Mike would understand. Like you go around around and around, and you're not even sure, but you can see where everything is, and you can just go and grab what you need. So that's one awesome implementation. I don't know. I just want to leave notes to everyone everywhere and say, well, if you're here, you should totally do this. But I was just reading a great article today about what the use case for the AR will be. Basically, with Facebook, we did kind of graph our network, right? Our friendships and everything else. And we have a graph of, search at Google, but we will be mapping everything 3D now. We will have locational information that we can share, real time with people, which is, I think, very interesting.
Yeah, we had a show recently where we talked about machine learning, and I think that's probably another scenario where you combo that together, right? And now you've got this data and this learning about areas, what picture you're seeing, what visual the camera's seeing, and then diagnosing that, and then making decisions on what it's going to overlay and augment for you. And now you get this kind of rich experience as well. I don't know if that's something without markers that you could do, sort of thing too.
You can actually mark the locations as well. So location markers are possibilities. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like extension of your brain. When you're, at the supermarket, you can try to remember what you needed to do. You can take a look at your to-do lists for the very basic thing, right? When you're there. But yeah, we will see what will happen. It's a very exciting word, though.
All right. Well, you want to show us how people can get started with that, or what you got to demo? Cool.
I'll share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Little small.
Yes. So this is better.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I can read it.
We'll go even higher. So I have an Angular project here that I started with, CLI. Everything is basic, But the thing I wanted to show you today is like what we want to do. I mean, why do we need Angular to start with, right? To create these 3D experiences. The coolness of it is that we can just encapsulate everything inside any kind of components and services and reuse it. And Angular really makes it very easy to pass data into it and kind of have a relationship with it. We can define as many attributes as we want, so anytime we don't have to rewrite it. So I was thinking, like, how should we rewrite these things? I mean, one thing that Austin did with his presentation on ngConf is very close to the pattern that A-Frame is doing, which is creating a lot of different components for different parts of 3D scene. But in my case, I did create just one because I really like using the service instead. But yeah, I'll get to that. So our main goal is to be able to encapsulate everything and just use something like this and create a whole experience, right? And maybe I should show you the experience itself before I go into it. All right. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally do. Oh, is it? So it's like a globe thingy?
Look,
Yes.
yeah.
So this is just a marker paper, and it's my camera is getting the marker, and then it knows where to place the objects. So if it's not a sphere, I mean, I can just say torus here. Let's hope it works with the last changes that I made to it. Yeah, okay. So you see it? All right.
Is that a rainbow donut?
Yes.
That is awesome.
Yes. Yeah, it is really fun. You see, I mean, I move it as long as my camera sees it fine. I mean, it's pretty stable too. Like I can take a look at it. I mean, just imagine that that's a I don't know, maybe anatomically correct model of a skeleton or something like that. Basically, you are able to, you know, take a look at it and turn it in your hand and you know, do interesting stuff. So, and so if I go back to my sphere too, it's easier to see. I can define some click events that are broken, yay. And you know, you can define click events and then you can do stuff with it too, which is where Angular is very good.
Cool. So like the sphere itself would actually be tappable or something, clickable?
Yes. And you know, with the pinch events and everything else, you can take a look, just get closer or not. All good. So there are a bunch of libraries out there. Let me talk about them first. So I did take a look. The ARJS was one of the most popular ones, but I didn't have much luck getting it to work properly. And there's very little documentation. One thing to be aware of is everything is very experimental at the moment, and very few libraries are really being maintained. One thing that I get to work with is AR Toolkit's extension for JS AR Toolkit. And you know, that seems to be working pretty fine, although it hasn't been maintained for a long time. So
so this is wrapping 3JS though, right?
Well, wrapping, yes. And also the actual power of it is not the wrapping part, because, well, it's just giving you some util tools for 3JS. I mean, you can definitely do it without the, let me see. Well, you can't do the 3D part without the thing. Well, what it is doing is actually not super related to 3JS. It's just accessing to the renderer. That's all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not creating the models for you or anything like that. You're still doing that for yourself using 3JS. So just to be clear, 3JS is a 3D modeling tool, well, 3D library for the web. So you can create 3D experiences, games, and everything else. And it has some WebGL capabilities as well. And this is this library, ARJS, AR toolkit. What it's doing is it's accessing to your camera and then giving you some functions to work on, where, like, for attaching the points to the 3D objects. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So these are very long functions, but if you take a look at it, what it has is it gets the user media, and then it sets some parameters, and then on success function you you do attach the models and also create the click events and things like that. So this is the basic demo that's on their website. So if you just like copy and paste everything into a service or a component in Angular, that works, right? But that's not what we want to do. And we want to, you know, take advantage of Angular's capabilities and integrate it very well into our applications. So that's why I have two different services. One of the services is communicating with the ARJS and accessing the tools, importing that and making it usable for me. And the other one is 3JS service, where I create the scene, the objects, and the camera and everything else so far.
So why do you like the surface over the component-driven approach?
Oh, yes, great question. So this is actually my use case. It depends on the use case, I believe. So if we go over 3JS, what it is a little bit. So it's a tool for you to tell your story, right? And it needs to do a few things for you: create a scene, create a camera, and create some objects and lighting and everything else. I mean, it totally makes sense in like doing it like A-frame and having a component for a scene, component for a camera, component for any other object. And that's a perfectly fine use case, I believe. That would also make it very easy for example, designers to work with it. They can just throw in some of the components and voila, you'll have a scene, which is great. The reason I like the services is because I think usually I create components that are more specific, I would say, if it makes sense. So for example, in this one, I just have one component for pattern marker, right? And all it takes is the object and the marker itself. Marker is this little images on my wall. And then it creates the whole thing for you. So this is the use case I'm usually shooting for. And having a bunch of components is not very necessary for me. But having all of the functionality of 3JS, all of the functions that I create over and over, being in one service is very helpful, if it makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, I tend to favor the A-frame approach, where it's declarative for these type of things. To me, it feels a little more natural when I'm building UIs and things like that. But that's just me.
So what is your usually approach? Do you usually just start writing the HTML and then create the components afterwards?
I usually start with the components. So I will, make a sphere component or whatever that may be, and then start putting it together inside of that, inside the camera scene. So
yes, but then there's one. I don't know if it's a problem with the A-frame, but you did address it on your talk at ngConf, which is taking things I mean, putting things on the DOM and then taking it back, all these things is kind of the issue, and you did solve it by using the shadow DOM, but I don't know. I usually do react with the objects in a different way, I guess, the applications that I was building. So it's more, it needed more complex stuff. And every time I didn't want to do another scene, another camera, another, I don't know, something else. Just, it's kind of
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, it's easier for me to see the objects, 3D objects, like the sphere and everything, as objects and interact with them that way, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it is. I discussed this a little bit, but like when you have like these scenes can be like thousands of objects, and so performance with components and things like that is going to be limited as well.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, but that's me. I mean, it totally depends, and components, just having different components is really, really enabling people who doesn't want to deal with the JavaScript part, doesn't want to create new objects and stuff like that. So I think A-Frame is solving a great problem for sure. But
how much is 3D involved in this whole process? I mean, you've got these 3D objects that you're putting on there, but do we have to do a lot of 3D stuff to do the augmented reality thing? I mean, is it just some for the depth of what you're putting on, and then you can just deal with 2D objects, or like how much is it 3D involved in it?
It's pretty much all in 3D, because you're working on the 3D space and you're mapping something in 3D. But you can absolutely put 2D, kind of like a hologram stuff, but that's not. I think you still need to use 3D space. Doesn't really matter. So one thing that you could do, I mean, if nobody wants to do it, really ARJS is working with A-Frame. They do have a separate library, which makes it really easy to use. It's just a component-based library, but I'm sure more of it will come. I mean, mine will be open, available for sure, but I'm sure more will come out, and we'll be able to just write HTML and not worry about the 3D space. But to be able to write it right now, you do have to create a 3D space with the camera and scene, for sure.
Do you ever work with shaders or anything like that from 3D program?
From where?
Like 3D programs like Unity or something like that, where you're working with shaders and like way more complex type UIs.
Yes. So the last project I was working at was at Autodesk, and what we were creating was a 3D library, kind of like a node-based programming tool for 3D on the web. So it has WebGL capabilities. So basically, you just drag and drop stuff. But yeah, maybe I'll show you an example. Okay. Okay. Maybe logs. Not sure. All right. Can't remember my. All right. So basically, it allows you to do just drag and drop, and then you have the messaging system that you can use to basically add it to any kind of web application. So maybe I'll be able to show you some examples. So can you see it fine?
Yeah.
So these are the nodes that you drag and drop. You have these nodes here, and these nodes have all these inputs that you change with the position and everything else, and then you create these experiences. And when you click to, you know, have the VR rendering, you have a camera which renders for VR, and then normally you do have just a regular 3D camera. So we did deal a lot with the shaders and stuff, and then your experiences, you can kind of like put stuff and change colors of the stuff, do all these cool things. But as you can see, this also requires you to know a lot of 3D, because you are creating, you know, still lighting, still shading, and everything else that's necessary for, you know, 3D programming on the web. Was there another question about the shaders that you had?
No. I was just curious what your experience with them was.
Yeah, I never created a really super complex shaders or anything, but you know, I have been working with 3D on the web for a while. So, where were we? Where should we start? So since we are on the WebGL 3D part of it, let's talk about it first. So to be able to create anything 3D with 3JS, you need basically three things. One of them is a scene. This is where you, this is your environment to tell your story, basically. And you need a camera to look at your scene so you can render it. You need lighting. And then you need some kind of object to show, basically, right? And then you can do lots of animations and everything else with it. And every object also needs some, you know, shape definition. And then basically the texture. So by texture and shader, what we are defining is how the lighting is reflecting off of the objects. So that gives us a chance to define kind of, you know, if it's a hardwood floor or very velvety texture and everything else. So this is where most of the developers, the regular, you know, web developers run away when I start talking about these. So I just wanted to tell you, these are all the things and major concepts of 3D programming. And it's very much like a set design. If you think of it, you have to have a stage, camera, light, and, you know, objects that goes around. So if you can, you know, keep it calm and just, you know, don't run away when you see these concepts, that would be great. So here, let's take a look at one of the object creation. So we are creating a 3D object, mesh object. So mesh defines the actual, well, the geometry defines the actual shape of the thing, which is just a function for 3JS, and then mesh is the whole thing with the material and the shape put together. Does that make sense?
So mesh is always expecting two things, or?
I wonder if you can give, I mean, there might be more options, I don't know, but at least two things.
Okay.
Basically, you can define the geometry, which is fine. You're just saying this is going to be a sphere, but if you don't give it any material, there's no way of knowing how the light will reflect off of it, so it doesn't really exist. It exists as you know, vertices, but it doesn't have anything to render.
So if you didn't pass in a material, would it even be visible? Like if you spun it up, or not really?
You can actually render the vertices, but that's also giving another shader. So basically, it depends. Normally, yes, there isn't any shape for sure, but you know, yeah. Let's say there isn't.
Okay.
Because so many rendering programs do give you a geometry without the material just to show you what you have. But that's also giving a different material, basically, different shader. All right.
The material is like, I think of it as like the paint for the object. Like I'm painting a house or painting my wall. Like, what do I want my little sphere to look like? Like what color and stuff.
And if you you can think of it without the shader as just the concept of it. You have the concept of the wall, but no material. So there is no wall to be seen. All right. So here also I'm creating a renderer which is defining what will be rendering our whole scene. And we have the WebGL 3.js WebGL renderer, and it has some other renderers that we could use as well. And
so the stuff that you've shown so far right here is basically the 3D object that you're going to want to place on the display, like the sphere or the donut that was floating around. Like this is all for setting that object up, right? And then rendering that object. So far, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I can also put on my 3D service. I am getting the renderer. I'm creating the renderer here, but I can put any kind of 3.js functionality here. For that could be if I'm doing VR, I could create different cameras. For example, perspective camera is a normal camera for the regular view, but then you need a different camera settings for rendering for a VR. So I would put everything inside a service personally and reuse it in different components maybe.
So cool, so cool.
By
the way, I like the classical music subtle touch in the background there.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I keep listening to the same music in a loop. That helps me focus and kind of keep the time as well. So if you go back to the component part of it, so this is what we are doing differently when we are using Angular compared to not using Angular. One of them is we are not touching the DOM directly, and we are trying to use the renderer of the Angular. That allows us to be able to render it in a different environment other than the browser. Like you can do backend rendering in the backend using Universal or do other stuff. The other thing that I am doing is setting some inputs for the components. So that allows me to be able to kind of make it reusable for many cases. In this case, I'm taking the model as a string, and that allows me to change the model from sphere to torus or anything else. So I can listen for my I can add some click handling using Angular and not have to do it with 3.js or anything else. So I am including my services here, and the init service is giving me, my AR service is giving me an initialization function, which is accessing directly to the camera and user device and setting up some of this stuff like what is my device and orientation and such things. And I can handle those things in my service, or I can, if I want to be able to do specific things each time, I can just pass it a callback and do it here. And that's what I'm doing. I want to be able to pass in the callback and be able to change the things with my input. So that's why I chose this approach. And I'm just taking the sphere from the input, and that way the AR library is able to take the object from me, not creating it itself, and pass it in to the to its own functionality to attach with the camera. It was a very long sentence. I'm not sure if I made sense.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So it requires me, the library requires me to add some classes and stuff like that to define the orientation, and that's why I'm also using the Angular renderer here, and not letting the library touch the DOM directly. One other thing that I am doing differently, well, I thought I was, yeah. I am passing in the canvas to my renderer, which is the canvas element is where all of the 3D is being defined. So instead of my library creating its own 3D canvas, I am creating it with Angular and then passing in my particular instance of it. And we do some setting the camera. And we have two things that we are doing here. We are loading a marker. So this is just the hero image that's on my wall. And you can actually change this image. You can make it, take it as an input and change the hero image, which is the detector where the 3D is going to be displayed. And then once we have the marker, we are adding our model to our marker, and then we have some click events that are, well, click events are giving some rotation to our model. And everything we have to run in a request animation frame because, well, the rendering function we have to run in our request animation frame because it has to run 60 frames per second, and it gives us a lot of performance improvements when it comes to especially using the browser's built-in capabilities. For example, when you move from one browser to the other, request animation frame stops the animation and stops wasting your energy. So one
have run outside Angular there. Can you explain that?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
I said I noticed you have run outside Angular.
Yes.
Can you explain that for everyone?
Yes. So Angular Zone is checking if anything has changed in your components, and then it's every time something has changed, it's checking all your data bindings and everything else. So we want to run this animation, especially outside the Angular, because this animation has nothing to do with Angular. It's just going to happen. It's by the 3JS animations, and it's not going to affect or trigger anything else in any of our components, any other components. So we want to be able to run this outside of Angular, so Angular doesn't panic, anything change? Do I have to change anything else anywhere else? So it just moves on. So this was the part that just broke. It just had some issues, but in my final code, I'll just push today afterwards and fix it. So ideally, anything that you run with 3JS, you just don't want to involve Angular. And this is a very good case of doing this. And I've seen ngZone run outside Angular being used, or many times in many places. But this is a very good use case where it's not always a good idea to do that.
Okay, so I have some questions.
Yes.
That's the stuff to go over. Okay, so to kind of break this down, you've got the camera that's reading your camera, right? And you've got this canvas to render your 3D object. Is the camera feed being rendered inside that canvas? Do you have like one canvas and it has both of these things going on?
Say one more time. I didn't get it.
So like you're rendering the camera, the input coming from the camera in the browser, and you're also rendering this 3D object that you're going to place in this scene, right? Are you just using one canvas to render both of those sources, or are they two on top of each other?
So when I say camera, it's just defining my point of view. So where I'm looking at it, the scene from, and it's allowing me to render from my point of view. So if you think of VR, so camera is basically you. Wherever you turn, the camera turns with you. So it's still the same scene and it's still the same canvas, and there's no, other external, like an object or anything, a camera. That's how we define our point of view, basically.
So your feed from because you have a webcam capturing you, right? And that's what you're rendering out in the browser right now, right there. Yeah. So are you rendering that with a canvas element?
The video.
Your feed, yeah, your video feed, yeah.
I see. It is rendering on the same canvas, yes.
Okay, so one canvas rendering your video feed, and then now you're adding a 3D object to that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then the 3D object is something that you created with the 3JS code that you showed. And now you need the AR code to find your marker. So you gave it the image that's the actual like image on your computer that represents that marker. Is that correct?
Well, yes, marker definition.
And then the AR is saying, okay, where in the canvas imagery do I find that marker?
Yes.
That's not correct? Okay. And then it gets that information and finds out, okay, here's the location of it in the 3D space. And then you use that to say, that's where I want to put my sphere, right?
Exactly.
And then it knows the depth. It's able to understand the depth, the Z depth of that as well, because now you're like, your marker's right next to your head right now, but if it was further back in the room, you would adjust that sphere to be smaller, right?
Yes, and it should. It does. Hey, where did you go? Oh, maybe it's not. Yeah, I think my service was.
Okay, so there's the AR logic part that has to get like, where is that marker in the 3D space and give you that information. And then from there, you can attach whatever you want to attach to it, right? To pull this off.
Exactly.
And then as that marker location moves, so if your camera was moving or whatnot, you need to then write the code to say, what's that new position? And now move my 3D object wherever it needs to be visually in that space. Does that sound correct?
Yes. Well, thank you for making it much more understandable than I did. Yeah, it's really hard to know how to explain these things.
Cool. Yeah, I want to kind of get an understanding. Okay, the code that we looked at is what we were seeing, and kind of like conceptually. So, like, if for example, I wanted to, instead of putting a sphere, I wanted to put like a banner, like what I think of as a flat rectangle that just says like, super tasty candy bars right here on the shelf, right? I still need to think in terms of implementation from 3D space. Like I need to now, it's going to be a rectangle, flat rectangle that I want to show, but now I got to think about it. Like I still need to create a 3D object for that rectangle and then position it based on where the AR is reporting where it needs to be and adjust its dimension size accordingly. That's sort of stuff still on me if I'm going to implement this AR solution. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So basically, this is your 0 spot, and then you can put any of the objects anywhere. Like you can make it a little bit further and bigger and smaller, and you can have your users interact with this and make it smaller or bigger. And this is all the things that you have to do. The library is basically giving you the point that you are going to attach the object and also the camera access very easily.
I have a quick question. So Does the software actually interpret the position of your marker as 3D, like the Z index in and out, or is it just based off of the size of the marker?
I don't think it's related to, yeah, I think it's the size of the marker. And you can define those as well. And you can also say, you know, some stuff like, don't see it if it's this far away. So you can define like what your camera can see and how far it can see. So if you're too close, you might not see, or if you're too far, you might not see it.
That's nice, so that you can change the orientation, or excuse me, the position of it based upon other input as well. So if you wanted to have like 3 markers and say, all right, if maybe your hand is placed over one of the markers, that the element will be moved up or down or something like that.
Yes. So it's really hard for it to see this also because if you can see, there's not much space between those images. So it's having really hard time. What it's looking for is to see the black and white edges. So that is causing a problem. But if, you know, normally if I had a better thing that's printed, it will be much easier for it to move that object to there. Or you can have multiple objects defined with different markers as well. So it's fun. Yeah, you can leave your notes and, you know, put text and I don't know. I think it's very interesting. I feel super magical, like, you know.
Oh, it's total magic. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So the libraries, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say what's cool about it is it seems like pretty accessible, you know? I mean, yeah, there's some 3D stuff in here, but like you said, you can get some of the stuff kind of canned already for you and kind of get up and going and playing with this stuff fairly painlessly. I think that people can kind of dive in. It seems pretty cool.
Yes, yes. And, you know, your, as I said, your image could be a QR code as well that directs you to your website. And I believe this is bit.ly/ngAir demo is where you can actually find it. So you can point to your camera as well, and this is displaying it. So you can go there now and point your camera to any kind of hero image. And if you need a hero image, you can just Google one too. They're all the same, that one. And actually, I do have it on my GitHub. I can show you there. So this is the repo as well. Should I put it on the chat channel?
Yeah, you can throw it in there. We can throw it out and get it to people.
And you should be able to find the hero image under my assets. So you can now, if you want to try it, does somebody want to try it? You can point your camera, go to this bit.ly address, and then point your camera to this image and see if that works for you.
Now, is that hero a term? Is that something that we should know getting into AR?
Yes. So this image in particular is called hero. I have no idea why, but yeah, I should search for it.
And so we would need to print that out and
no,
behind us somewhere? Or?
No, it could be, no, you can just point your camera to your screen. Well, you have to have 2 cameras, right? Like your phone or something like that. But just let me know if it works for you. You don't have to do it now.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right.
All right, well, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Anything else that you want to show us here before the end, or kind of this kind of good?
So a few things that I wanted to tell you, choosing the libraries. So these can't emphasize enough, these are all experimental stuff. So there's not much out there. This library was, you know, last committed in 2015, I believe, but it works still, which is great. So if you want to have an application that's kind of your main application, do not trust any of the libraries, and just, but they're open source. You can always put the time in it and, commit to it as well. The other thing is that, so what was it? Don't remember. Well, JS AR library is pretty cool. And if you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter anytime, ace something. And yeah, if you build something, please do share as well.
Nice, nice.
This
very
was
cool.
really cool. And I know how hard AR is. It's so emerging. Like, there's very few libraries. The docs are terrible. So it was really cool to see all that come together.
Oh, thank you. You are defeating the purpose. We're just trying to say, like, it's very easy to do it with, Angular. And it will be. I mean, if you just, take this component now, you can just add it to wherever you want. Take my services and libraries. And, some of the shapes you also don't have to create yourself. You can just have A-frame as well, which has, pre-built components. And you can just put those stuff there, right? Those 3D models there. You don't have to build them yourself as well. So setting up is hard, but it's so much fun, and do experiment with it.
So if I was planning my awesome AR app and I'm going, okay, what's my strategy on implementing it? Would it be fair to say that I could look and go, okay, well, I could have an Angular app, create that as a PWA, as something that potentially I could get onto people's mobile devices. They could save that PWA on their home screen and be up and running, and I could get them this AR experience using their camera with that, all within Angular. Is that something I could shoot for?
Yes, absolutely. And don't just, think of it as, printed or like real world experiences. Also, you can create your AR website as well. You can just have these little sneaky, markers everywhere, and people can take a look, which is kind of fun.
All right, cool. Gears are spinning thinking about that. Hopefully a lot of people will be inspired and start thinking about how they can use this stuff and combine it with Angular. Very cool.
Yes, and the more we do it, it's going to get better, right? And we will build tools for each other. So many things are open source, and it's worth playing with and contributing to them as well.
I think one of the neat things about it is that, like with AR, I don't need a cardboard or a VR set or anything like that. Like I could, if I didn't have to work the rest of the afternoon, go start working on this, right? And not have to have any other devices and kind of get up and go. So that's kind of neat and compelling to think about too.
Yes, it's super accessible.
But not only for you as a developer, but for your user base as well. You could get it working for anybody who doesn't have any specific hardware other than a web camera.
Exactly.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Get some picks. Who's got picks? Alyssa, do you have any picks? I think you're muted.
Of course I am. I don't have picks today, but this was really cool, and I'm so glad to have got to see that. Thank you, Ayşegül, for doing that for us.
Thank you.
Awesome. I don't have any picks either, so we're just gonna keep going down the list. Austin,
what?
That's the picks. I know. I think we need to change the pick section. I don't know. I think people like the picks, but I kind of want to do like something different from picks. I don't know. Maybe
like my favorite meal of the week or something.
No, like something.
Don't take my pick. That's my pick.
Yeah, right. No, maybe like not something that everybody has to say what their thing is that they did. We could just kind of wrap up the show with something, I don't know, cool. We could all dance or something. I don't know. maybe not. I don't know.
What is it? Like end it with a Harlem Shake or something? Like
yeah. Right. Or we could all freeze. The mannequin challenge. I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, okay. Anybody picks? Austin
Right,
pick?
maybe I'll ask for a random fact then.
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah, let's do it. What's your question?
Just tell me a random fact.
Oh, that's your question. Random fact. All right. Let's see.
Like about the universe?
You know, everybody has these knowledge that, you know, it's so useless, but it's there. You know what I mean? Let me think of an example.
I guess I'm not good on the spot.
But if you're thinking of it, then it's not random.
Well, yeah, but like you wanted to say it to someone, but you can't because it just doesn't make any sense. Well, I have one.
Okay, let's hear yours so that we all have like an inspiration.
Yeah,
I got one too. So after you, I got one. I just.
So I worked at One Market Street in San Francisco, and I'm just curious about the history of the building. I start Googling it, and I found out that it was the headquarters of the railroads. And I found out the guy who sits very close to me, parallel to me, has the same name of the CEO of that railroad company, which is totally random. Totally didn't need to know that, but it was just so weird to find that out, and I didn't tell him.
Nice. That's a good one. I like that one. So my wife told me one yesterday, and that is that she found out that you can untie a double knot in your shoes the same way you untie a single knot if you just grab the right string and pull.
Wait, what? Seriously? No.
So yeah. So if you double knot your shoelaces and you grab the right string, you can pull that thing and it'll untie the double knot the same way it unties a single knot.
I have to go get some shoelaces to test this theory.
Now, if you get a nasty knot, it's not on me. It's all up to you. I disclaim anything, but I saw it work. So I think there's like you got to pick the right lace to pull. But
oh, okay. Random fact, mine. I'm staying at the in-laws because our new house doesn't have Wi-Fi yet. It's a horror, tragic story. And my in-laws live on a lake and they have a boat, and we were out boating one night and we were out way, way, way too late, and they've never like driven, I don't know, boated, whatever the word is, at night before, and we found out that boats don't have headlights. It's a random fact, most boats don't have headlights.
I am liking this segment. This is awesome. Anybody else have anything?
I have a pick.
Oh, okay. Is it a random fact pick?
I know, right? Like, you're ruining everything.
It's for a
All
segment.
right,
It's a small segment of the audience, though. So you have to be on Mac OS with the new MacBook with Touch Bar and use VS Code. And not just VS Code, but VS Code Insiders. And if you fit into that category, VS Code now supports Touch Bar. And that one came out in the Insiders build today.
Oh,
Wow. That was beautiful.
So to 0.07 of our listening audience, you're welcome.
I feel like that could totally fall into random facts. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's a total random fact.
2 checks, right? 2 checks?
And you can't just say you're welcome, Mike. Come on. You have to sing you're welcome because we know you sing you're welcome.
Nobody wants to hear me sing.
It's like 2 words, Mike. It's 2 words.
Yeah, and it's too painful for everybody else.
All right. Well, unless Austin has a random fact for us. We'll,
Come on, Austin.
or pick.
I do not. No picks or random facts today.
All right.
Come on. Then in that case, I have to ask, like, what would you build with AR? What would you like to build will be useful? It's a very tough question. I've been thinking about it for a long time.
No. It's so not tough at all. I thought of it weeks ago. I want to build, and nobody take it or I'm going to be really mad, but I want to build this app that like lets you, like, you know how Snapchat, you can like put filters on your friends with the phone? I want to do it, but where like you accessorize yourself with like, you know, fun filters or silly hats or whatever. And then whenever your friend like points at you, like they see that. And I don't know if it would be like with something like you showed on the wall where it'd be like a symbol or if it would be like their phone. I don't know how it would work, but I want to basically have like, you know, an accessory app where you're like, look at what I'm wearing today. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that Alyssa would be the marker.
I'd like to have this thing where you could like put dog ears on. Oh wait, Snapchat already does that.
I know, but you don't get to choose it. Like the person with the camera is choosing like what is they're putting on you. I want to say, oh, today I'm going to wear this ridiculous Dr. Seuss hat. So anybody who opens that app and looks at me sees what I chose to put on myself that day. Like it's awesome. It's going to be great. You guys, this is where the future is going.
Awesome. Anyone else have any ideas? Austin?
No, nothing. Oh, you're breaking my heart.
All right.
I saw a demo online. It was just a little quick video / GIF that was of a phone showing a room where it scanned the room and allowed you to place furniture and different decor around that empty room virtually, so that essentially you could do your shopping in a AR type of world. Very cool stuff.
Very cool. Yeah.
You know, it might be cool is to have one where it could identify where like power outlets and stuff are in a room. And you walk into like a coffee shop or whatever, and you don't have to like go looking under chairs and, and point your camera, and now it lights up all the spots that you can plug in at.
That's a good one. I like this idea.
Yes.
We're starting back up our Angular Shark Tank.
Right.
I'm just happy that this has not turned into, hey, wouldn't it be great if the CLI was in AR or anything like that?
we were almost out.
Actually.
Yeah, why isn't some of this code just bundled in the CLI?
It would be really cool if I could get my errors on my wall.
There it is.
Oh my God.
Your wall's not big enough?
I don't write errors, so I wouldn't need any space.
I was even thinking you could like connect it to like Wemo or other like LiftX or whatever, and like have like all of a sudden anytime you error, it's like your house starts and it's like red lights go off, and you're just like, oh God, fix the syntax or whatever it is. You know, like this would be amazing.
I've seen people do that for build servers, like when the build fails.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, like everybody at their desk has a red light, and when the build fails, the red light of the person's desk starts lighting up, making noise.
I love it. I love adding the actual error or whatever it is to like the walls around you. So you're just like looking around. I'm assuming though you'd have to look with your phone, right? Like that's because it's a long way. Right, it's a long way off until everyone has wearables, I guess. Okay.
All right. Well, let's put a bow on this thing and wrap it up. That was a good idea. Thank you, Ayşegül, for not only coming on and presenting and taking the time to prep stuff, but also giving us inspiration for a new way to wrap up our show. So appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone, for accepting my totally useless idea as well. This was a very informational podcast, and I ruined it now.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's always fun to chat with you. But if anybody has any questions, please hit me up on Twitter as well at icesomething.
All right. Sounds good. We're out. We'll see you next week. Later.